Hi, everyone. This is Dara Singh, and this is the Stories to Sales podcast. I'm so excited to have my friend Harika here today. Now, for you and me, we both relate to the story of how everyone tells us to pick one thing. But then there's women like my friend Harika, and I'm sure if you've seen my stories or if you're just listening right now, all of us are multi-passionate. But Harika is someone who is just killing the game. She has her own fashion brand called Arya by Sabbineni with her and her sister. She also has a killer resume and corporate career. And I thought, as we talk about our personal stories, Harika is the perfect person to show you that anything is possible and you don't need to put limits on your identity. So without further ado, I would love for you to introduce yourself, Harika.
Thanks for having me, Dara. That's a very generous introduction. As you mentioned, I am truly a multi-passionate woman. By the day, I am a senior director of business development at a multinational company. It's a healthcare technology role that I play in the vast world of oncology research. How do we treat patients better using real-world data, technology, AI, and every tool possible to deliver the most efficient cancer care. And I'm also, for the past 5 years, have been the CEO and co-founder of Arya by Sabbineni, a South Asian couture. And for the past 7 years, I've also been a professional model with runway, editorial, and commercial experience. I've signed with multiple agencies across the country and have done really interesting work so far, and that's something I continue to do so. Yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I'm happy to share my story in detail and especially the paths and the pivots that I took to get here.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. And she's also a fashion model, guys. So, when did you know growing up that you would have multiple interests? Like, was there ever a moment where you're like, I like this and I also like that? I have so many interests.
Yeah, I think I've always loved fashion growing up, whether it was just like, taking my mom's saris and like taking them to the tailor and getting them made a certain way, or experimenting with accessories and just dressing myself up or down. And that just felt like a hobby because, I thought I was just a girly girl, and growing up in South Asian household, fashion is not a profession. So never really gave it much thought other than a form of self-expression. Um, for the longest time, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, like most of us do. And honestly, looking back, it's one of the biggest blessings that I didn't take that route. I ended up going to pharmacy school and then getting a master's and PhD degrees. And I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in my corporate career, whether it's, deeply being involved in cancer research for the past 15 years during my academic time versus now in the corporate field. Everything I've ever done in my professional career so far has been around cancer care, and I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity that I have. But never really, I didn't really think that I would have more than one thing growing up, just because I never saw that happen. And that's why I'm so passionate about spreading that message and living by example, is because you can do more than one thing. You just have to really understand and get clear about what excites you so much that you're willing to put up with all the hurdles that come your way, and still to continue to be able to push past those.
And you had said that growing up, you never imagined yourself doing multiple things. So I'm sure there's a story in that. And when did you realize that, okay, yeah, I like getting dressed up. Yeah, I'm following this pharmaceutical path, but let's step into the world of fashion. Like maybe those initial modeling days, how did that come to be?
Oh yeah, this is interesting. So the first time I did anything modeling related was maybe almost a decade ago during my PhD program. One of the postdoctoral fellows had a passion for photography, and he was also an MD PhD doing his postdoctoral training, and I was a PhD student, like I'm a PharmD PhD. But we started talking about our hobbies, and at that time, it was still a hobby, not a passion or anything bigger than that. And then he said, "I love photography. I would like to take some photos of you." And me being someone who loves to getting dressed and like, posing, I said, okay, why not? But this was also in the middle of nowhere, in southern Georgia.
Oh,
That
wow.
was my first experience with being in front of a camera. I realized I really liked it. I loved the photos that he took. But this was, again, like I said, a decade ago. Instagram was just a personal diary at the point. Um, so I got a real kick from it, but didn't know what to do with it. Again, I was in the middle of nowhere in Georgia, hyper focused on my PhD. Got through my PhD, continued down the postdoctoral training. That's when I traveled to Dallas. I posted I was in Dallas, and then this photographer I've been following for a long time, who's kind of well known in the South Asian community, said, "Hey, next time you're in town, we should collaborate." I was so excited. So I went to the mall, got the nicest couture outfit that I could find, and I took my sister. We went downtown, and he took some really beautiful pictures. And when he posted and I posted, this was also almost 8 years ago. I'm kind of dating myself here. Um,
Wow. So, and
and
it seemed like it was serendipitous, right? Like,
it
what it
really
was, yeah.
is, yeah. And so some local designers started reaching out if I would model for them. And when I had enough questions and inquiries about modeling for people, that's when I started asking myself, well, there's got to be a professional way of doing it, and what would that look like? And that's when I realized I need to sign with an agency. So I interviewed a couple of agents that was in Dallas at the time and Atlanta, because those were the two cities I was shuffling between at the time. And then I got myself an agent, and then kind of took this whole modeling to a professional level.
Wow. And from the moment you knew you wanted to do it professionally to the time you signed with an agent, how long was that period?
I would say about 6 months, 6 to 8 months.
6 months. Okay.
Hmm.
See, I think so far what I'm hearing is that this has been such a story of alignment where it's like, I feel if your heart is really in what you do and you have that vision, I think things can happen in a smaller time frame than you'd like, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Do you believe
didn't
that?
quite. Yeah, no, I do believe that when there's alignment, things happen. I never thought of it from that perspective until now. But again, I always believe that if you want to do something badly, you'll figure it out. You'll find a way to do it. And this was before social media. I mean, social media existed, but more in the realm of Facebook and like posting cute photos, but not to a point of what Instagram and TikTok are today, where businesses were not run on Instagram back then. So finding agencies was not an easy job, because you didn't know who to trust, because Instagram following was not an indicator back then. So I had to really go to from agency to agency. This was the time where you would carry your comp cards, or what we call them in modeling world, like your book of photos, really. And a
Oh,
comp card is like a business card. So it has a main photo of you in the front, and then a couple of different photos of you in the back with your measurements, your height, your weight, your color, all the details about you, and your phone number and your email. So that's the only card you took with you to auditions, to the agent. So that's the only thing you would get to leave with them, right? This was again before Instagram, so they didn't care to ask for your social media or anything, no digital portfolios. It was still a very paper portfolio kind of setting back then. And so I didn't have anyone to talk to about, hey, I'm talking to this agency. Everyone says they're great, that they're legit, but like, how do you know? Right. So I had to take that chance on my own. But I also felt like, when you have good support system, your sister and your family and everyone, your friends, they're like, just go ahead and try it, and we're here for you. So that really helped
I
to take a chance.
I love that. It seems like everyone was super supportive. Like I'm sure they were super elated when you started your pharmacy career. And then when you were like, I want to do fashion modeling, and hey, you did get success with this agency. Um, so many South Asian women, not everyone, but some do face some hurdles where when they're really passionate about something, they get some doubt, some like, are you sure you want to do this? And it's perfectly okay if you've never had that moment. Have you ever been doubted in any way, at least like through your corporate career, through the fashion modeling, or was it ever like she's got this? Yeah.
Um, I think doubted to my face was rare. Maybe people
Okay.
talk behind my back when I started posting photos of my modeling. Um, Maybe I know for a fact that I was doubted in the corporate world because I looked so young, and as a young presenting professional woman of color in big rooms where big decisions are made, even though the deck that they're using to make these decisions are the ones that I put together, people didn't even really know that I did that, right? So there was this like doubt by not giving me my dues. Kind of, it exists in corporate, I'm
Like
sure.
your flowers. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that saying that like giving someone their flowers, right? It's something
Exactly.
like that.
I didn't get my flowers until I left my corporate job, and then the calls kept coming, right? Like the CEO said, I'm going to make your exit difficult by offering you an enormous amount of retention bonus right now, and I'm going to give you the title that you want and the clients that you want. And it was nice to hear that, but I'm sorry, it's too little, too late. But, that's for another
Yeah.
episode, but I'm happy to dive into that as well. In terms of doubt, I will say this. I've been told by an extended family member to my face when I launched my fashion brand, you are too good for this. Though I think the intent was to say that, hey, you are a very intelligent, highly educated woman with a PhD. You work in pharmaceutical industry or healthcare technology space. We come from, well, my extended family has a lot of manufacturing and pharmaceutical businesses. With your background, you should be spending time building bigger businesses. I think your time will be best served, and your intelligence would be best served if you invest your time and money in a technology business or a manufacturing business. Why are you selling saris and lehengas? That is so beneath you. And the intent was to say that, hey, make a lot more money and I think you can do better. But I appreciated the fact that they said it to my face and
Right.
gave
I
me an
mean,
opportunity
hey,
to think about it.
yeah. I mean, that is one thing. If someone needs to say something however they feel, if
Yeah.
they say it to your face, that shows some degree of genuineness, you know?
Yeah. And
But
honestly, those words
yeah.
stuck with me for a while because they're not wrong. And if you think about it, yes, I love my fashion brand, but the ROI is not nearly what it would be if I invested this much time, passion, and energy in a technology business or something else, right?
Yeah.
So they're not wrong in that sense. But when you feel so called to do something, when your passion kind of overtakes that logic of, yes, there's more money elsewhere, but this is what brings me joy, this is what fills my cup. I think it's
Yeah.
worth listening to that voice and pursuing that. Uh,
I think so many people listening to this podcast today can relate to that because I think the number one thing is trusting that inner voice. So many people get a calling, but how many people really answer it? Because there's so many, either it's your environment that can be feeding doubt, what you consume on social media. There's so many things that can give us a reason not to do the things, not to do what we want.
mhm.
But I'm happy. I mean, like, look at you today. So when you heard that from that family member, even though it was innocent, what did you I'm obviously you went forward anyway. And so yeah, what did you do to kind of hush that voice and listen to your own?
Um, well, it helped. The fact that I launched this brand with my sister and sharing every high and low with her, it made every negative thought, comment kind of like easy to brush off because at the end of the day, she and I were doing something together and building something together, and you can't put a price tag on it. I mean, you can, but
Right.
can't really, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that we had already launched the brand by then, we didn't tell anyone until we did it, until we were like fully in it. Like, we didn't want this kind of negativity to stop us from pursuing what we wanted to do. And we knew this was happening. We knew this was going to come. Just because, South Asian families feel they're so involved in your lives that they feel the right to express themselves, whether or not that is welcome or appreciated.
Asked. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Just
um,
yeah.
so anticipating that, we didn't quite share it with anyone but our parents, that we were doing this. And by the time they had made this comment, it was already too late. We were too deep in, or at least deep enough to
Yeah.
not have to take their comments into account. But it did prompt us to have some hard discussions. This journey has by any means not been easy or straightforward. And there are days, and I'll be honest, I'm about to take a break from the brand for a little bit just because how overwhelming it is and how chaotic it is. And it's been 5 years, and I loved the point of where we are now and how much we've been able to scale. But I also am burnt out, and I owe it to myself to acknowledge that. And if I take a break, it will only serve the brand better when I come back. And I want it to be less dependent on me and more technology and, in a scalable fashion, tech driven, scalable brand is what I'm going to pivot into.
It's very few people that can say something so honestly about how they're feeling in the moment. I feel so. If you're listening to this, you feel burnt out, you feel like you need to take a small break to step away. I think Harika's words are so helpful to know because it's just a break. You come back even more aligned and you take things to the next level. I think, Harika, I can really relate to that in some ways. In kind of a different angle, but I think in 2023, when I felt like my business was peaking and I was getting all these speaking events, I was creating my own events. As you may have known, I unexpectedly lost my mom, and it was in that moment there was no rule book about, all right, I have to heal. I'm a little burnt out as well. There was no rule book about the next steps. And ultimately, I hope through this podcast, as I ask you more questions and through the other guests that come, I hope people know that these are all part of the human experience, no matter how ambitious you are, right? And so I really respected you just being like honest where, hey guys, I'm just stepping away. I'm still like a boss lady. I just need to come back more recharged. But speaking of burnout and everything, because you've had a corporate career for some time now, you've had this fashion brand for so long, you're probably still modeling, you're doing other things. How do you manage your time?
Oh, I'll tell you when I figure it
Yeah.
out.
Okay.
I've gotten so much better than where I was a couple of years ago. I think we've all gone through this hustle culture, the glorification of the hustle culture, where overworking is a badge of honor. The less you sleep, the more productive you are. And I have seriously destroyed my health in that process. But now what I do is like I said, being honest with myself, how much bandwidth do
Yeah.
I have? And life is seasonal. Sometimes my corporate career demands more of me, and sometimes pre-launch, I spend more time on my brand. And sometimes during Fashion Week, I literally go to New York City and I'm there. I can't do anything else. Preparing for that and kind of coming off of Fashion Week is also kind of exhausting. So I'm more honest with myself on what I can do best in that season of life, and prioritize accordingly. But we've also been really fortunate enough to be in this era of technology where there's so many systems and processes you can put in place to get more time back, to be more efficient, and to be more accountable. I mean, I realized I want to invest in myself, which means I work with a personal trainer 3 times a week. I work with a nutritionist, a therapist. I got myself an executive coach last year who really helped me unblock a lot of my own inner inhibitions to really realize my higher potential. I started seeing her in like from corporate roles, but then she ended up being like
Yeah.
this therapist that really unlocked so many things inside of me, whether it's cultural conditioning or women that we create imposter syndrome in our own head and all those things. So I would say invest in yourself. Get friends that will always cheer on you, support you, and keep you accountable. And if you say, hey, I'm burnt out, I need you to just be with me. And that's a privilege to also be able to count on your friends and family to be able to do that. So, time management wise, I don't know if I have any tips for people, but I think being organized and having a plan really takes you a long way. Like meal prep, yes, use ChatGPT just to get your meal prep out of the way. Just tell ChatGPT what you have in your pantry and fridge, and it'll give you a meal plan based on your
Right.
goals. Like you you work with a trainer or you have a class pass subscription, you are spending money, so you are going to show up at the gym or at the studio with your personal trainer. If you are seeing a nutritionist, she's going to ask you what you're eating. And then you have to be
Right.
honest with them, right? So I think even the most disciplined people need a little bit of accountability and support, and processes in place.
I love everything you've said, and as one South Asian woman to another, I honestly was one of those people who was like, oh, limiting beliefs. Like, I've had my peaks where I've been just so confident, like to the point of like just not caring. Then I've had moments where I'm like just, maybe it's hormonal, whatever. But I have to say, one of my biggest realizations was the degree to which my culture our culture, like those type of beliefs that were embedded, because you never think it's you, but then when you take a closer look at yourself, you realize, wow, it is in me. I would look at other people and I'm like, why do they care too much about what other people think? Like, you're not married by this time, you don't have this, X, Y, and Z. But then I realized, wow, to some degree I was a people pleaser too, and I think that stemmed from the culture. So when Yeah. And so when you look at if there are any cultural beliefs, just like one that you felt was very deep rooted from your background, what was that and how did you get over that?
Yeah, that's a great question and something I'm actually working on with my therapist and what I worked on with my executive coach. By the way, shout out to Dara. Her name is also Dara,
Okay.
executive coach. Highly recommend her to anyone that's seeking that kind of support. But one of the cultural conditioning aspects that I really want to get away from is this toxic humility. Like you want to be so humble that you're afraid to ask questions, that asking questions is nosy. Talking about money is crass. Yet we want to know everything. We want to make the most money. How are you going to learn and grow if you're not comfortable asking questions and talking about money? And those are often interrelated. And that's something I recognized as being nosy is different from being curious. So I am
Right.
curious. I'm a very curious person, and I do not want to subside that. I do not want to put a label on it as being nosy. How dare I ask people like how they got to where they are and like if there's anything they can share with me. I'm not asking them like what's your bank balance? Like tell me where you invest your money. I'm just saying, hey, what led you to work with this person or this industry or like how did you come about this business idea? I think staying curious is something I've always loved. I just didn't quite own up to it until I realized being curious is different from being nosy. And the
Right.
fact that I work in business development now, making multi-million dollar deals, not always, but sometimes, complex deals, you have to talk about money. You have to ask your clients, what's your budget? Otherwise, how are you going to make a realistic deal, right? But it took me a lot of unlearning to be able to ask them, what's your budget? What's your timeline? How can I help you achieve your goals? Because I want to be your partner, not trying to sell you something here. And so that cultural conditioning of don't talk about money, don't ask people questions, don't be invasive, really put limiting beliefs in me. And I'm trying to unlearn those to really tap into my full potential.
Yeah, like if you can imagine, there's always that discrepancy between men and women when it comes to how much money they may earn. Then add another level sometimes of being a woman of color. Sometimes that's why these questions are even more important to ask because you don't know what you're being lowballed or where you are. And yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this right now, just
Mhm.
know that as long as the context is well, like as long as you're not like competing with your friend or this and that, as long as you're helping each other and wanting to um, win in that way, you can ask those questions. I'm sure the more we ask as women, the more we only help each other grow as well.
And you can tell
Yeah.
when someone's being nosy versus curious, right?
Yeah, you totally can. You totally can. Because, I mean, I remember when I graduated college, I went on the NJ Transit and I would run into people that I graduated with. And I was really shocked at the amount of people that would ask, like, oh, where do you work? Like, how much, do they make? I make this much. How much do you? And I'm like, okay, this is different. This is not like us trying to help each other. You're just
Mm,
being nosy. And I'm like,
mm,
whoa, how did your parents raise you? But I was honestly very shocked because, yeah, I was just very shocked at that experience. But on the flip side, I guess if someone does want to help you and says that, hey, I'm in your field, I'm
mm.
making this much, you should definitely ask for more. That's different. So,
I'm glad you brought that up. I think one of the things I actively practice is give before you take, share before you ask. It's a good way of showing good faith, and people know that you're not coming from a malicious place, rather a
yeah.
curiosity to help each other out, right? So when I mentor PhD students, that's another thing that I'm doing right now is I'm open about my pivot from academia to corporate and how massive the salary change and the shift has been. And I want more people to aspire to make that money because there's so much money out there to be made. You just have to be vigilant about it and you have to put yourself in the right places and right rooms to be able to do that.
I love that you said that because I actually have a couple people in my circle too who aren't always in like the private sector, but if anything, I may actually want you to connect with them. I think there could be after this call, we'll arrange that. I think it would be great to have these conversations. Um, but I love that you said that because I think career pivots are always super hard.
Mhm.
At sometimes you don't like one, you need clarity. Two, sometimes you want to know the pivot's going to pay off, and I'm sure like whether it's business, whether it's your corporate career, what was the time maybe it was even this where you made a pivot but you didn't exactly know if it would pay off, like how do you go about analyzing if a risk is good for you or not, if a pivot is good for you or not?
Mm, I definitely can relate to that weird space when I was really adamant about pivoting from academia to industry. This was 2018, 2019. I knew for a fact that I wanted to pivot out of academia. Massive respect for academic researchers, but I've done that. I've seen what a snapshot of what my future would look like if I continued down that path because I was trained to be a pharmacy scientist, research pharmacist. In my head, I was going to continue teaching the PharmD, PhD, and graduate students. I'd run a lab. I would do clinical pharmacy and be that bench to bedside transformational researcher, and that kind of was what we were trained to do, what we were trained to think. And every career shift will be, or career advancement would only be 5 years and 15 grand or something like that, right? You're constantly writing grants, you're constantly chasing grants. The value of your research really depends on how much money you're able to you really get in grants, right? And then that's that constant pressure. And the impact you make is massive, but it's very slow. And that's what I wanted to walk away from. But there was also a lot of stigma associated with that because why would you want to leave this esteemed career of being a professor one day, running your own lab, publishing, and training the next generation of scientists? That is all noble. And I have massive respect for people who continue down that path. I just had to be very honest with myself. After a while, if you're not being fulfilled, if you're not getting excited to go back and teach the same course or run the same experiment, write another protocol, then you're not being honest with yourself and you probably will not be giving your best at that work. But at the time, again, this goes back to a time where networking was not that prevalent. Knowledge sharing was not that common. You didn't know who to talk to. And all I knew was, well, pharmacists can go to pharmaceutical companies and get medical science liaison positions, which is what I applied for at the time. And there was about 6 month gap in my career. I was
Okay.
so adamant. I knew if I take another academic job, there's no going back because I will go down that path and I'll be too deep in to leave at that point. And so again, this comes back to having great support. And so you feel like, I have another month or two in me because I have great family and my sister and everyone that supports me. So I'll be okay. That really helped me to be able to really extend that period of unemployment until I figured out my next step. During that time, I was consulting a little bit, and I was working at an ice cream shop, right? Like, and the lady who interviewed me, the owner of the ice cream shop, like, is this some sort of a prank? Because
Yeah.
you're a pharmacy PhD and you want to scoop ice creams. I'm like, please don't get me wrong. I'm actually working on myself. I'm doing
Yeah.
certifications. I have a consulting job, but I can't sit at home. I want, I'll go crazy. So I need to be in the, like amongst people and like do something, have communication while I get my certifications, while I do my interviews and while I do my consulting. But luckily, that only lasted a few months, and then I got my first job, and I had no idea what I was signing up for. The job description was vague. It was two to
What
three
was
times.
it? I'm really curious.
Yeah.
What was it? Yeah.
The title was account executive and operations manager. I'm like, they're two different things. And
Yeah.
exactly two different
Yeah.
things. I had two different jobs basically for pennies on the dollar. So, account executive meaning I'm the sales and business development person, but operations manager meaning not only do you sell the project, but you also execute the project because you have a PhD, go figure it out.
So basically everything. Like it just seemed.
Everything. And honestly, that was my crash course into what corporate life would look like. That was my first exposure to sales, business development, corporate speak, contract, negotiation, prospecting. I didn't know any of this, but I am so grateful for that person who took that chance on me and gave me that job. And obviously, I worked 15 hours a day. I completely
Right.
ruined my mental and physical health. But 12 months later, I was able to negotiate another job offer with a 200% salary increase.
I love that. And speaking of knowing your worth, I got just a couple more questions, but I love that you were able to negotiate your worth. Well, first of all, I love the ice cream story too, because I think so many people are in a messy middle. I have to be honest, like in 2023, I don't think a lot of people know this, but like I was coaching people, I was doing done for you messaging work behind the scenes, but I actually partnered with this agency too. And I was doing some silly things, like no offense to anyone who's a virtual assistant or anything, but I was healing. I was healing. I was doing retainer work. I was coaching people here and there, but the meat, you needed the meat in the season, and I partnered with an agency and I did some work maybe a lot of people listening wouldn't want to do, which is scheduling someone's Facebook posts, which were writing different types of copy for different things. Like in the moment, I just had to think on my feet and do what was best for me while I figured out the next steps. And I think, yeah, and I don't think anyone really, and the deadlines were actually, it was different. It wasn't like laid back, not saying that the ice cream shop was laid back, but it was pretty intense and it was an interesting time period. Let's just say that, the messy middle. So if you're going through a messy middle, there's always like something brighter at the next entrance. There's people in my own life who did all sorts of jobs in their messy middle. And at the end of the tunnel, it was like something amazing really waiting. So, but
Thank you for sharing
get,
that. I appreciate it.
yeah. Yeah, anytime. And something, what I just loved what you said was negotiations. I think too often, like, we forget to ask what we deserve. If you have a business, if you are negotiating your next offer, like, how did you go into the conversation? Like, basically, what are your tips? Let's say that for someone listening who wants to get higher paid clients, who wants to negotiate a raise or better
Yeah.
terms on their offer.
It's not easy. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. You just don't show up into a room and like slide an envelope and be like, "This is my number," right? That just doesn't
Yeah.
happen. What happens is you might have heard this before. You always want to ask them what their highest offer is first. And then say, hey, based on my research, based on the people that I've talked to, and based on my own experience and what I bring to the table, I believe this is a fair number for this role. And I'm willing to look at an overall compensation package to get me to my goals. And then leave it at that. Do not overshare. Do not negotiate against yourself. I just want to know, like, if it's possible for, the salary to be rounded off to XYZ number. Just don't say any of that. Say, based on what I know, based on my experience, based on what I bring to the table, these are my expectations. What can you do? And oftentimes, in the roles that I interview for, most of the time you're not negotiating directly with the hiring manager. It's usually through a recruiter. So you don't have to feel shy about it.
Mhm.
And the last couple of jobs I've had, I actually negotiated directly with the hiring manager. And I was able to, again, 2025 has been really hard. I'll be honest with you. I had a corporate consolidation that impacted my role, and then I got another job offer that got rescinded 2 days prior to the start date. So overall, for a good amount of 2025, for almost 6 months, I was between jobs, right? So it's hard to negotiate because you do not want to lose the offer in front of you,
Yeah.
but you also do not want to take a step back. You worked really hard to be where you are, and if you take a step back now, it's going to be really hard to negotiate the next time because you're always negotiating from your current salary. And so I had to strike a balance between over negotiating versus negotiating my worth. And luckily, I was fortunate enough to have 3 offers on the table, and I eliminated one because it wasn't quite what I wanted. And so I used one against the other to kind of negotiate the best package for me. Not in a crass way, but I'm like, hey, listen, this company is willing to offer me XYZ guarantees. What can you do? And then they were able to quite match that. So I got to the company that I wanted to with the package that was offered elsewhere.
I I love that. And what I love about this is you also mentioned like an approach that I take in like pitches that I take in negotiations too is like this is my experience. This is like I what I basically love about what you said is you don't put filler words in your approach. It's you don't like you know your worth. You come into the conversation with that energy, right? And so you had mentioned something though. You said be careful not to overshare. What does oversharing look like in a salary negotiation or maybe any negotiation? Like what do you mean?
I mean, a couple of different things. First of all, speak less. You don't have to over justify why you want a certain base. Usually I say, this was my previous base. This is what I want to be in my next role. So the move is justified. I'm not moving from one company to the other for the same base, but I don't have to spell all of that out. This was my previous base. This is my expectation, which would make the move worth it for me. On top of that, I really want a certain amount of commission structure and I do not want a cap on my commission. So whatever it is that you feel appropriate, lay it all out and just wait. Do not overly justify why you need this, why you need that. What you can do to really define those negotiation terms is before the negotiation starts, ask more questions about what are the expectations of the role, what are the revenue expectations, so you know what the upside of taking more salary versus higher salary versus higher commission structure is like, right? So it might not apply to all positions, but generally speaking, look at it from an overall compensation standpoint and ask a lot of questions so you know exactly what is expected of you and how you can be compensated the most for what you will be doing. And so when you come to the negotiation table, I highly recommend that you negotiate through a recruiter, but if it's not always possible, negotiate yourself and then practice it with a friend. Ask your friend to be the hiring manager. And because when you say these things out loud, I want this much money, you kind of like choke on the inside if that's your first time doing it. So I highly recommend role playing with someone, saying it to someone's face, I want this much money because I'm worth it. I mean, don't make up like unreasonable amounts, right? But,
Yeah.
but
Like
let's
$5 million, please.
say
I mean, I'm
exactly.
not ruling it out. Maybe, I mean, there are people
I mean,
making these
there's a
deals, and
job that's
maybe,
worth $5
yeah,
million, and we're gonna get there. But
there
in
you
this
go.
season of life, ask for
Yeah.
what's fair and don't over justify. Less is more. And when I say don't overshare, oh, at that company they were going to do this, this, and that, don't name names, don't bring up real companies, but also don't make up scenarios, right? Then you don't have anything to back up. And then they'll be like, okay, go take that job. And then you'll have to back it up by going and taking that other job.
Right.
But talk to your peers who are in similar roles at different companies, and that's where I am a huge advocate. Like if someone watching this podcast reaches out to me like, hey, I'm in similar field, I'm thinking about a pivot, or like I want to know like what the overall compensation is like, um, I would be more than happy to share that, right? Not from a place of I want to boast about it or I want to spread misinformation or anything like that, but knowledge is power. When you don't know what you are worth or what people in your similar roles are being paid, you can't ask for that. And it happened to me at one of my previous jobs. So I will never take that for granted again.
Something to always think about. I like if anyone's listening to this to know that always ask for what you're worth, but actually know, like,
No,
be
yeah.
aware of what you're worth. Do the research, ask your friends. And I really like you said, coming prepared into any meeting, into any scenario with the right energy. You don't want desperate energy, and like you said, being able to pitch yourself well. Um, Through my business, one of the things I've coached a lot of women on is obviously using their story to pitch, but I also make sure they don't like overshare their story too much. Like there's a reason you're sharing it to ultimately get what you want. It's not always tears and gloom here. But so yeah, without further ado, I really enjoyed our conversation today. If you could leave the listeners today with one piece of advice, maybe it's related to your multi-passionate journey. It seems like it's coming to you now. So yeah, I would love to pass the mic that way.
Wow, this is a loaded one.
Anything that you want to leave anyone listening with, listen,
Yeah,
anything.
no,
Yeah.
first of all, thank you for having me and this opportunity to share my story and my journey so far. I used to use the word multi-passionate in a very vague sense as someone who is interested in multiple things, is how I looked at it, or is doing a lot of different things. But then that has really become my identity almost to a point where I mean that when I say multi-passionate, I mean it in every sense of the word. I don't identify as a senior director of business development at XYZ company. I do not identify myself as a research pharmacist turned professional corporate baddie, whatever. I do not identify myself as a founder and CEO of Aria by Sabbineni. I don't identify myself as a professional model, rather a coming together of all of those things and some. Like I have more ideas in the pipeline. I am a very proud, obsessed auntie to my nieces. I am a very
Oh,
invested girlfriend. I want my girlfriends to succeed, and I invest a lot in my female friendships. I so don't define yourself or put yourself in a box because society tells you if you focus on one thing you're going to be good at it, and to each their own. Some people are like that, they can only do one thing and they're going to be so good at it. If that's you, more power to you. But in this world, in this day of technology, you can do more than one thing. If your heart's in the right place and you're called to do that, you will find a way to do it. There are so many tools and so many processes and so much infrastructure in place that you're able to do more than one thing. And I love when I'm able to cross pollinate my knowledge and my experiences from one world to the other. I bring my experience on the set as a model, talking to people, networking to my corporate world, and I bring that professionalism from corporate world to my modeling world. That's why when I show up at a set, I'm very professional. People love to talk to me and share with me and continue working with me. And so that's the cross pollination. I love that because you're able to enrich every experience because you're multi passionate and you care about more than one thing. And so don't take that lightly, and you can do it.
I I feel like she was speaking to all of us there. I love what you said. And before I let you go, I think one of the things I actually forgot to ask, last question I promise, was you've told us you were a fashion model, or you are, fashion modeling. We have the corporate career, research, PhD, we have the fashion brand. In the next 10 years, is there something that's in your heart, in your mind, that maybe no one knows yet, where it's like, no, but I want to do that too one day? Or you don't have to share at all. I just figured, because if I know anything about myself being a multi-passionate, like I took an acting class last year, and I'm like, I want to get to that too, but then I want to do this podcast for my brand. But so is there anything about you that people won't realize that's like on your heart that you want to do too one day?
Without giving too much away.
Yeah, we don't want to jinx it, so it's fine. Yeah.
I will say I dream big. I want a big life, and it does not mean designer purses and big mansions. I want a very rich life that involves a lot of experiences, a lot of community building. So whatever I do next, I think I want community to be at the center of that. I have some ideas, but I don't want to jinx.
They're for her. We don't want to jinx this. But
as for the intersection of technology, community, all my passions coming together.
I love that. So thank you so much, Harika, for your time today. Guys, I'm going to link her IG. I'm going to link different ways you can connect with Harika and continue to follow her multi-passionate story. I know from listening to this episode, I could really relate to a lot of what she has said about conquering limiting beliefs that stem from our culture, still pushing through. And so stay tuned for next week, as we have another special guest who's going to inspire you just as Harika did today. So without further ado, thank you so much, Harika.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for creating this platform. We all need it.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.